And then obviously we put the blueprint out there. Hopefully Cowboys watch the tape. Yeah, he wasn't completing passes when he had to roll behind or outside, and those tackles kick so much that it invites you to pick a side and let him go. Because Jalen's looking at the rush every play. So yeah, you just have to be disciplined and give him that quick escape route where he could get to his guys quick.
You know, there are things that defenses come out there and do, and I think it always comes down to how we execute and how we do our jobs. You know, we play really good teams, we play some really good players, but it still comes down to controlling the things you can.
Hey, y'all. Today, of course, it's Matt Rogers on the Honorable Mention podcast. Today, we have Mark Schofield from SB Nation. Big name over there, always working on tons of stuff. Get your NFL fix over there. Mark, how's it going? How are you enjoying the season?
It's been fantastic, Matt. It's great to be here. This has been a absolutely fascinating season so far. I mean, I know we're going to get into it, but we've got anywhere from like 5 to 7 teams in the AFC that could sneak into the playoffs. You've got a ton of stuff going on in the NFC. Obviously, near and dear to your heart, a critical game this weekend between two long, storied rivals. But it's been a great season so far. As a Patriots fan, it hasn't been great. They did get a win last night against Pittsburgh, but hasn't been the best season. But it's been a great season overall.
Yeah, I mean, I guess since you bring it up, I mean, we'll get to the Steelers end of things, but obviously they scored a win on Thursday Night Football, shocking the world. Even though, you know, the Steelers aren't world beaters, but you know, I think most people, the smart money, everything was on. You know, the Patriots are going to let this one up, especially in Pittsburgh. Do you think that this is potentially the end for Belichick, or is this, you know, kind of, you know, we're writing him off a little too soon?
It feels more likely than not, to use sort of a legal turn of phrase. This is the end. You know, Kirk Herbstreit, Al Michaels, they talked about it during the broadcast on Thursday night. Certainly, you know, I get asked about it all the time. You know, is this the end of the Belichick run in New England? The sticky point might be the fact that there's two real jobs here. There's Bill Belichick, the head coach, who is still, in my view, one of the best head coaches there is, if not the best head coach. But Bill Belichick, the general manager. And if you were to do sort of a performance review of those two people, Bill Belichick, the head coach, is probably somebody that you're going to give a good reference to, a good review to. Bill Belichick, the general manager, on the other hand, has struggled. I mean, you look at two recent sort of decisions, right? There's the Mac Jones draft pick in the first round a couple of seasons ago, which seems to be a miss. And you look at, say, Matt, their 2019 draft class. Every player they drafted is either no longer in the league or no longer on the team. When you miss on the quarterback, when you miss on an entire draft class within like years of each other, that's going to set you back as an organization. And so the question becomes, would Belichick give up sort of de facto GM duties? Hard to think he will. Hard to think the Kraft would still want him to be GM. So that seems to me to be the tension point. Now, maybe they find a way to smooth it over. Maybe they end up with a top 2 pick and Kraft says, look, you can stay GM, but you got to pick a quarterback. None of this trading out stuff, none of this trading back stuff. Don't come here and tell me you're going to draft the Notre Dame tackle or the Penn State tackle. Draft a quarterback and fix it. And maybe Belichick's like, you know what? I've seen Mac Jones too. Like, it's not working. We need a QB. And maybe that's how they patch it up. But I'd say it's more likely than not. Belichick says, I had to do things my way. They have a sort of, you know, departure, you know, an agreement to move on, mutual part into the ways, whatever. And he's somewhere else next year.
You think he would go behind a microphone, or we'll just hear from him every now and then, you know, in that world where, you know, maybe this is the end of him as a coach of the Patriots?
See, I think he goes somewhere else. I mean,
really?
He still wants the Shula record. He still wants that record of all-time wins. And there will probably be an opportunity. You know, there's been a lot of speculation. Look, you know, here in the DC area, right? There's been a lot of speculation about potentially Bill Belichick coming here with the Commanders. New ownership group, that would be a huge splashy move. When you mention Washington, there's another team that comes to mind. And I'll just throw this out there. Dallas Cowboys have another playoff flaw. Jerry Jones loses patience. Does he say, you know what? let's get Bill Belichick down here to right the ship. He backs up the Brinks truck, gets Belichick down to the Star, keeps him out of the NFC East in Washington. That seems to be a Jerry kind of move to me.
Wow.
It would mean a playoff loss or something like that. But that's a scenario I could see coming to fruition.
Jerry that would be maybe the only what Cowboys fans would love that, because then Jerry really would take a step back. There's no way you get both of them in the room and Belichick takes that new gig if he's not going to be CEO.
And you feel like if Jerry's going to take the step back for anybody, it's Bill Belichick, right? Like he's not going to do it for just your average coach and hire. If they decide, look, we're going to bring in Eric Bieniemy as the new head coach if we fire Mike McCarthy or Ben Johnson from Detroit, they're not giving that person GM duties. No, he'll do it for Belichick, but Jerry's not doing it for just anybody.
You're exactly right on that one. Let's go to the other end of the Thursday night game. Steelers. They're 7-6 now after quite a clunker, but they're still within striking distance of that 6th or 7th. Do you think that they still sneak in there in the back door?
It feels like it's slipping away from them, Matt, right? Like you see when you lose in back-to-back weeks to a 2-win team in Arizona and a 2-win team in New England, both of those games at home as well. That's tough to come back from. And I know that, look, Kenny Pickett was out. Mitchell Trubisky looked not great. Let's just put it that way. On Thursday night, they were actually calling for Mason Rudolph in the stands.
Yes, that's when you know it's bad.
That's how you know it's bad. And make it matters worse. These are their last 4 games. Colts, Bengals, Seahawks, Ravens. Those are all 4 teams that are either fighting for their playoff lives or in the dance now as it is. That's a tough schedule. So it seems to me like it's slipping away. And you're hearing rumblings about Mike Tomlin and his tenure. Now, they've been a very historically patient organization. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin. I mean, that's the lifetime, my lifetime right there. 3 coaches. Not too many organizations can say that. They've been very patient. So I'd be hard pressed to imagine they make sort of a panic firing. But this is a situation that seems to be slipping away from them. The schedule was easy for them to start the season. And as they were sort of getting themselves to the playoff mix, a lot of people, myself included, pointed to these 2 weeks we've just gone through as, oh, look, those are 2 wins, Arizona, New England. Like that's going to get them to 9 wins. They just need to steal 1 more. That gets you to 10. That's probably enough. They lost both of those games. Now it seems like they might not get to 8 wins, let alone 10.
It's tough. And, I really, from my perspective, I'm still impressed. I think if you would have told me before the season that the Steelers would be 7-6, I'd be like, yeah, I believe it. I mean, that's what Tomlin does. This is not one of the most talented rosters in the league. I think it always feels, you got your easy fixes, new quarterback, new coach. I just feel like, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater there. If you get rid of Tomlin, I think from my perspective, what's going on with the Steelers is that they're the way that they build their teams is just not jiving with the modern NFL. I mean, you got 2 teams like the Packers and the Steelers. You're kind of having the same outcome with the 7-6 middling teams who are fighting, but you just don't have that top end talent, and then you don't retain them. You don't play in free agency. You don't trade up in the first round to go and get the best of players year after year. You're not going to be winning a lot of 21-16 ball games these days, like the Steelers want to do, and I think that's a bigger problem than Mike Tomlin, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Matt. And I think these 2 teams have played on Thursday night, New England and Pittsburgh. There's a lot of similarities between them right now. They were both built to win in that sort of, we'll win with our defense. We'll win the 13-10, 17-14 rock fights. And in some games right now, you can probably pull that off, but not in today's NFL overall.
No.
I think early in the year, it seemed like defenses were catching up. Scoring was down. But in recent weeks, you've seen scoring tick up a little bit. Offenses are figuring some things out this year. And so it's still not the right time to be going all in as a sort of defense first organization. I still think you need that quarterback piece to start with. And New England certainly seems like they're still looking. Jury might still be out on Kenny Pickett, but I think more people would say right now that it's probably not going to come to bear in Pittsburgh with him being the guy, and they might have to dip back into the quarterback market soon. And so then you contrast it with a team you just brought up, Green Bay, that over the past couple of weeks, I think more people are coming around to the idea that, hey, maybe Jordan Love is the guy. And now they're storing points. And so perhaps those two organizations, Pittsburgh and Green Bay, one seems like they figured out the quarterback piece. One is still struggling in that regard. One's on the way up, one's on the way down.
Absolutely. Who are those 5 through 7? Since you're kind of sounding like I think the Steelers are on the outside looking in. Who are those teams? I mean, there's a ton of teams as you brought up at the top of the show.
I mean, it's really sort of tough to piece it all together. I mean, I do a sort of playoff pitcher roundup, each week over at SB Nation. I also do a sort of our playoffs scenarios, clinching scenarios, elimination scenarios, and it's really tough to walk through right now because you've got. Right now, Cleveland, Indy, and Houston are the 3 teams that are in. They kind of beat up on each other a little bit down the stretch here. In fact, we might get, that Sunday night Week 18 game that gets flexed into the primetime window that usually means something.
Yep.
Right now, that could be Colts-Texans for the final playoff spot because they play each other, and that would be sort of a tremendous game to look at. And that game is, I think, in Indianapolis. And so that would be a fantastic way to close out the year. From where I sit, I think those are the 3 that managed to get in: Cleveland, Indy, and Houston.
Okay.
The only thing that I'll throw out there is Denver. Because Denver has such, Matt, a favorable schedule. They get, to close out the year, they get Chargers this week, and Chargers,
that's a W.
That should be a W. They get Detroit, which is by far their toughest game left.
Yeah.
But that's at
not
Detroit.
world beaters.
Not world beaters. It's going to be sort of a sterile environment because you're playing indoors, and so you won't get a flunky weather type game. Then you get the Patriots, the Chargers at home, and you close it out against the Raiders. Like, that's a pretty favorable schedule.
2 against the Chargers, 1 against the Raiders. Right there, that gets them to 10.
That gets them
if they're able to score.
And New England at home, and New England has always sort of struggled to play at Denver. So I think that sets up well for them. I think Cleveland with their defense, and look, until he threw the interception, Flacco looked okay. That might be enough for them. Indy and Houston, the only caveat there is, look, if they go down the stretch and they're neck and neck, they play each other in Week 18, that might balance one out. Denver could be the one to sort of sneak in.
That's fascinating. Thanks for that look. I would have agreed with you on all 3, but I didn't look at the Denver schedule. So that's the
Denver schedule. There are 2 teams that are sort of sniffing around the playoffs right now that have such favorable schedules. One's Denver because we just walked through what their schedule looks like. The other is Green Bay over in the NFC because they get the Giants and Tommy Cutlets this weekend. Tampa Bay, Carolina, Minnesota, Chicago. That's also a very favorable schedule. Now that Minnesota game, that's in Minnesota. Minnesota's in the playoffs as it stands right now.
Yeah,
those are the other 4 very winnable games for them. And that Tampa Bay game, that's in Lambeau Field. So you've got a Florida team coming to Lambeau Field to play right before the Christmas holiday. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And you think the Rams get back into the playoffs?
I do. I mean, again, the NFC is fascinating, but I think a lot of it comes down to the quarterback situation in Minnesota, because they're sticking with Josh Dobbs this week. The Josh Dobbs storyline has been fascinating. That win against Atlanta, didn't know the playbook, didn't know the cadence, didn't know the team, and he still finds a way to win that game. It was a fascinating story, but in recent weeks, they've struggled. Now they're sticking with him for one more week, but if it's another struggle this week and they're playing the Raiders, Max Crosby said today he expects to play. Maybe they find a way to sort of, Vegas finds a way to win that game / Minnesota finds a way to lose that game. Maybe they go back to the rookie. Maybe they go to the veteran and Nick Mullins. It seems like things could be slipping away from Minnesota. The Rams have impressed me in recent weeks. And this was a team that, and we wrote this piece over at SB Nation earlier this week, what we got wrong, about this season. We sort of, as a group, had the Rams at 31 out of 32 teams coming into the season. Like, we thought that they were going to be bad. And here they are on the cusp of the playoffs. Sean McVay's doing a great job. Matthew Stafford's still spinning it really well. Puka Nacua has been a revelation. Cup's back. Aaron Donald is still Aaron Donald. And so I think they can get in. A team that was in, is now out. Seattle, they get San Francisco this week. So they're at 6-6. They're staring 6-7 in the face. Seems like Minnesota, Seattle, teams that we're in are starting to fade a little bit.
Wow. So the Eagles took one hell of a shellacking on Sunday night. There's no way, two ways about it. It wasn't just the score. It was the fact that you could tell that Shanahan, with his upbringing, and he just schemed guys up. He just picked out his guy on this play. I'm coming right after you. I'm going to embarrass you. Jalen Carter, you get some. Josh Sweat, you get some. I mean, you saw it with Christian McCaffrey wiping his forehead for the first down. It's just an ass kicking, just through and through. Maybe it's a combination of them, but what do you most attribute this to? Do you think it's a bad break with a tough schedule, bad game plan from the coaches, or just they played the flat out better team, and that even though the 49ers are looking up at the Eagles in the standings, the Niners are actually the better football team?
I mean, I think it's really a combination of things. And I'd start with the schedule, 3 games in 12 days. That's a tough stretch for a football team, especially at this point of the season where it is December and nobody's 100%. If you're in the starting lineup, you're still not really healthy. Like, few people are completely healthy right now. And I know a lot of the attention has been on Jalen Hurts and his knee, and he was taken to the locker room for a quick concussion protocol examination. When he came back, they had a short yardage situation. They didn't brotherly shove him, which tells you they were probably still a little wary about exposing him to an extra couple of hits there. The team was banged up. It's the end of the season. It was a tough 3-game stretch for them. So I think that was part of it. I also think, look, the 49ers are a very good football team. And I think the addition of Chase Young just makes their defense that much more formidable, because when you could take a former, second overall selection, top 5 pick kind of talent, and say,
absolutely,
you're a rotational pass rusher for the most part. You can play like 30, 35 snaps a game and just get after
all out.
And just go all out. That makes you very good as a defense. That offense has a ton of weapons. Brock Purdy is playing very well. I mean, the Brock Purdy discourse is what it is. I never waded into it, but I think we can acknowledge that he's doing an extremely efficient job in that offense.
Still got to spin it.
Still got to throw it. Still got to make the reads and throws. And they're a very good football team. Yeah. I think there's another aspect here. This reminds me in some ways of the 13 seconds game for Buffalo against Kansas City, right? And that Buffalo loses that game, and all they could think about for the next calendar year was getting them again and beating them again in the regular season. And I think there was some of that from San Francisco's perspective, because we all know how the NFC Championship game went down. Ever since that game ended, that roster was saying, look, on a healthy day with Brock Purdy, we're winning that game. We don't care what you have to say. We were the better team, yada, yada, yada. They had a year to stew about that game, and they wanted to prove something. Okay, they did. They went out, they won that game. Will it be the same in a potential rematch? I'm not so sure. I think it's much more likely a hard-fought, close kind of game, because I do think these are the two best teams in the NFC. I think the Niners just sort of caught Philadelphia at the absolute best time.
Yeah, I mean, and you caught them. I definitely think it's the legs. If you look at some of these pass rushing, the Eagles pass rushers flat out didn't have the legs. Now, part of that is because they were getting manhandled, so I don't want to make total excuses, but I think coming off just taking the partisan spin out of it, take your feelings out of it. You play, over the course of just so many weeks, you play the Dolphins, you play the Cowboys and the Bills and the Chiefs. I mean, you can only get up so many times. And so it would be I believe that it'd be a different game.
Yeah, I think so. I absolutely think so.
Do the Eagles win? Are they for sure the better team? I look forward to finding out.
I look forward to finding out too. I think the Eagles, both teams, have something they can sort of lay their hat on. I think Philadelphia can just, when they're healthy and they got their legs, they can lay their hat on the fact that they have the best offensive line. They have an extremely good, even against that pass rush, even against, how it looks with Chase Young, when they aren't playing 3 games in 12 days, they can lead into that offensive line a little bit more. I think, look, Kyle Shanahan does a great job at scheming guys up. And I know we're going to talk about this in a minute, but he did such a great job attacking the middle of the field in the run game and the passing game. And I know the Eagles have made an addition to try to shore that up, but Shanahan is a very good play caller. That's one of the things he does extremely well. And it might have been the middle of the field in this game. The next time they play each other, it might be another area of the field he looks to attack, but he's very good at what he does.
And I got to give him credit, and I like it. Obviously, as an Eagles fan, I'm like, frustrated by it. But as somebody who loves the game and likes diagramming plays and coaching, I mean, I love the fact that that on that out from Jennings and just in the red zone, you guys aren't going to stop at Eli Ricks. Okay, I'm going to shove you over again. Just keep going after it, hammering them. So. On a scale of 1 to 10, how you brought up this new addition from the Eagles. On a scale of 1 to 10, how big of a difference do you think that this actually makes? Because the Eagles' rush defense was just putrid on Sunday. They get Cunningham back. How big of a difference do you think that really actually makes?
I mean, with the addition of Shaq Leonard, getting Cunningham back, I mean, it's like a 6 or a 7 in my mind. I think a lot of
that's
it
a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is, look, Shaq Leonard, say what you want about. I know he's got people in his camp, some people that sort of question where he is right now in his career. It's another set of legs. It's an experienced player. It's somebody that at his peak can play well against both the run and the pass. He can give you a veteran presence in the middle of that defense, somebody that's seen a lot of stuff, in terms of how concepts play out, how pass concepts play out. So I think he can help in both phases. But I mean, I think the bigger part of that run defense, beyond sort of what Shanahan schemes up is, again, it goes back to the legs issue.
Yep.
Part of what makes that Eagles run defense go is when Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are swallowing up double teams or getting initial predation and keeping the second level defenders clean. But when they're sort of getting shoved off the line and the offensive line that you're going up against has the ability to reset that line of scrimmage, it makes it so much tougher to stop the run. So I think, look, you get sort of into a normalized schedule, it's going to make things a little bit better for that run defense as well.
All right, we'll take a quick break before we get into the Week 14 slate. Okay, so back to talk about the Week 14 slate. A lot of games with serious playoff implications. It's very exciting. Call it the most wonderful time of the year. You got Tampa Bay at the Atlanta Falcons, which could end up being a tiebreaker for who ends up winning this thing. Atlanta's 2.5-point favorites at home. They don't get the customary 3, so the odds makers must be all over the place on this one. And what are you thinking?
I kind of come down with Atlanta on this one, and I know that with the Falcons, the story this year has been the quarterback and Desmond Ridder and Arthur Smith's seeming reluctance to use Bijan Robinson and some of their other stars. I mean, there was a play earlier this year where you're in the red zone on the goal line, and instead of, finding a way to target Bijan Robinson, you're having your third string tight end throw a pass to his second string tight end with Kyle Pitts, your first string tight end, and a unicorn kind of player like blocking on the play. Like it was almost like Arthur Smith was being way too smart for his own good.
Yes.
In recent weeks, though, since Ritter's come back into the lineup, you've seen them get Pitts involved. You've seen them get Robinson involved. You've seen them get their talented players in positions to be successful. Ritter's looked a little bit better, not flawless, but better. So I give the edge to Atlanta here.
I think I'm right where the line is. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see Tampa Bay win by 3. But if you make me choose, I'm taking Atlanta, especially at home. They're right now in pole position for the NFC South, probably to face the Cowboys in wild card weekend to get blown out 49-21. But that's what I'm expecting here.
Yeah, that's exactly how it looks to me.
Detroit they're 3-point favorites at Chicago. So what are you thinking about that one?
Yeah, I mean, this was when this line was released, I was like, wait, just 3? What am I missed it? And then it was brought to my attention. Look, it's going to be a weather situation. It seems like there's going to be a weather system working through the Midwest into the Northeast this weekend. Here in the DC area, I know we're expecting sort of a washout as well. It's going to be a messy one, which kind of equalizes the field there. I still think the Lions are the better team.
Yeah,
and they're built to win in the muck too. Like,
Yep.
they got a pretty good run game. They can beat you up a couple different ways in the run game as well. They've got sort of a Mr. Inside, Mr. Outside with Gibbs. So I think they can do some things offensively, even if it's a sloppy game. The one thing that gives me hesitation about Detroit, Matt, and maybe this is more going forward, not just this week, their defense in recent weeks has been giving up points and points and points. And,
Yep.
just this past week, they gave up a bunch of points, even in a game that they won. And so I still think that this week the Lions are going to win this game, even if it's a sloppy event at Soldier Field. But that's something I'm watching with Detroit going forward. Can their defense be good enough to win a playoff game or two?
Indy got 2 point. They're 2-point favorites on the road at the Bengals. We talked about them as potential last week of the playoff of the year, fighting for a playoff spot. Do they add this one to the win column?
I think Cincinnati? They do. I think they do. I've been very impressed with Indianapolis. I'm very impressed with Shane Steichen. Like, to lose Richardson early in the year, but still be able to get this team in playoff position. It's been a very impressive job. And it's interesting. Like, a lot of what they do offensively is similar to what you'd expect them to be doing with Richardson. A lot of RPOs and, even some design QB run stuff, but they're getting it done with Gardner Minshew. And I've been very impressed by that. It was a very good win for Cincinnati Monday night against Jacksonville. I'd be hard-pressed to see Jake Brown have 2 really good games in a row. So I'm picking the Colts here.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I'm going on this one as well. I just think this is one of those that they've got to cash. They got to cash this one.
Yeah.
Browning has looked really good on Monday Night Football, though, I got to say.
Yeah.
Honorable mention, Jake Browning was really good.
It was very good.
Yeah. Jacksonville, interesting team, potential suitor for the 1 seed. Do you think that they beat Cleveland, where they're
a lot of
underdogs?
A lot of it, Matt, depends on Trevor Lawrence. Because he had the high ankle sprain that he suffered on Monday night. Doug Peterson said on Friday, look, he was a limited participant in practice on Friday. It's going to be a true game time decision. But how healthy is he going to be, even if he does go? And how much can he move? Because you're going up against Myles Garrett and a Cleveland pass rush that can get after you. You're going up against a defense that, last week, the Rams hung 39 on them. But until then, this defense has been very good.
Yeah.
If Lawrence goes, I give the nod to Jacksonville because I think they're the better team. But if he doesn't go, or if he's severely limited, then I think Cleveland wins this game. It's really tough to pick. This is one that, in terms of the plays that I'm going to be making, I'm not touching this game. It's just because it is legitimately going to be a game time decision. So I'm staying as far away from it as I can. I think if Trevor goes and he's good, I'll take Jacksonville. But if he doesn't go, or if he's severely limited, which again, you won't know until the game kicks off, I think Cleveland wins.
This could be a playoff preview.
It could be.
Both of these teams could be in.
There are scenarios where these teams see each other in the first round. So
it would likely not be in Cleveland. I mean, unless the Ravens were to fall on their face right now and just basically kind of lose out.
Or theoretically, mean, it could be a situation. Well, I guess that wouldn't happen either. Yeah. So yeah.
I guess the Ravens, because there's 5 to go, the Ravens would have to, realistically, they'd have to lose 3. They could lose to San Fran. I could look at the rest of their schedule. So they could go 2-3 and maybe Cleveland, because of, they get the same record and then Cleveland wins the division. I could see something like that, but most likely no.
Yeah, most likely no.
Minnesota is going into Las Vegas, 3-point favorites. What do you think of that?
I'll take Minnesota here because I still think that they're the better team. But Josh Dobbs has to be better. When we last saw Josh Dobbs, wasn't playing well. Now we did just get word. We're recording this, Friday afternoon. No Justin Jefferson on the injury report. So it looks like he's going to be coming back. That's going to be a huge boost for this Vikings offense. And Mr. Josh Dobbs, you're a very, very smart man. Just throw to Justin Jefferson. You got any questions, any curiosity, any confusion, just find Justin Jefferson and you're going to be okay. I think Jefferson gives them a boost. They win this week.
Yeah, I mean, Hawkinson, Jefferson, run it. Hawkinson, Jefferson, run it. That's
there you go. That's a simple recipe. A simple recipe for success.
It's all. I mean,
Yeah.
they hate to.
If only it were that
minimize
easy,
it.
though, right?
Yeah. I'm just so out on the Chargers. They're 2.5-point favorites. I know they're at home. This line makes no sense to me. I'm taking all of this. Taking all of this from a betting perspective.
I am taking Denver. Absolutely. I mean, we do on our SB Nation Football Monday show, we have this thing where we put teams in the crock pot when we're like, look, they're not done yet, but we're slow cooking them because we know where this is going. We put the Chargers in the crock pot like by Halloween. We're like, we're done with this team. Like, and I actually told my co-host RJ Ochoa, JP Acosta, I'm like, look, if we get to summertime and I start talking about the Chargers and anything that's positive, just mute me. Just kick me off the show because I'm tired of talking about this team. Like they do it to us every year. So Denver, give me Denver in this game. As we talked about, I think Denver could make a run, and winning this game would be a huge step in that direction. So give me Denver.
Yeah, it's I don't understand what people are thinking here. I mean, what have the Chargers shown us? I mean, they figure out ways to take the L. And I think they'll do it again this week.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is an interesting one. I think also just as neck and neck with the Cowboys and Eagles game for game of the week, Buffalo at Kansas City. Kansas City 1-point favorites here. Which direction are you going on this one?
I'm going Kansas City. I'm not confident with it. Both teams need a win here. Like both teams absolutely need a win. Buffalo, this is almost an elimination game for them because if you lose, you fall to 6 and 7. Like it's hard to see you get a win because you've got Dallas after that. You've got Miami in week 18. Like you've got some very tough games left on your schedule if you're Buffalo. And so you need a win in this game. And it's been a very topsy-turvy week. We can just call it that for the Buffalo Bills. With the Sean McDermott story that came out from Ty Dunn going on. This is a team that's under the microscope. But Kansas City's coming off a loss too. And they're facing questions about just how good they are. So I think both teams need a win. I'm going with Kansas City. 1, it's a home game for them, which I think is going to help them. 2, look, it's hard to see an Andy Reid coached team lose 2 games in a row. Like I just think they've got more going for them right now. And the fact is, I think they've got the better defense. And that the story of this rivalry over the past couple of years has been the offenses and the points and the quarterbacks. Kansas City's defense is playing well. I know Jordan Love just beat them, but this is a defense that has improved. And so I give the edge to Kansas City here.
I'm going in the other direction on this one, but for a lot of the reasons you said. I mean, Buffalo just flat out has to have this game as extension, as an organization. This is where you may see a blow up, a real blow up from Stephon Diggs. Everything, they go to 6 and 7. It's bad times in Buffalo. They've got to figure out a way by hook or by crook to overcome this. Kansas City can withstand a loss. We know that. But Buffalo cannot. And so they just got to get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a critical game for them. And, if they do end up winning, I think it's for a lot of the reasons you said. It's a us against the world kind of moment for Buffalo, it seems like.
It's got to be. Dallas has got more than the customary 3 at home. They've got 3.5 in a Sunday night football game against the Eagles, coming off of the most disappointing loss in years, really, for the Eagles. I mean, you got of course, the Super Bowl, but you lose the Super Bowl by 3 points, and you lose to Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. It's arguable that he outplayed. So that's not really an embarrassing loss. You lose those couple of games with Minshew last year. Okay. You lose to a Commanders team who you're not really worried about last season in the regular season with Jalen Hurts. Okay. It's annoying that they knock you out of undefeated. The 49ers game is the most embarrassing loss of the Jalen Hurts era. Do you think that the Cowboys, no matter what, still cover these points because the Eagles can't cover CeeDee Lamb?
I picked Philadelphia in this one.
Okay.
And I mentioned that phrase, us against the world. I think this is an us against the world moment for Philly too. I mean, that was sort of a island game of its own, that Niners game. It was in the late window, but let's be honest, most TVs were tuned into that game. They weren't tuned into, Browns, Rams, or, whatever the other game was. I don't even remember. That tells you, where this game was in my sort of watching hierarchy. Yeah. And you get blown out like that. And now you've got everybody facing questions from the head coach to the starting quarterback to the head of security even.
Yes.
Everybody from on up is facing questions right now. I think this is an opportunity for them to go onto the road in a hostile environment and say, you know what? We're still the defending NFC champions. We're still in the driver's seat for not just the division, but the top overall seed. And as I said, look, they've got a very good offensive line. They've still got a very good offense overall. They've still got a very good quarterback. And they've got a defense that I think matches up better with Dallas than it does, say, San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
I like Philly in this one.
Yeah, I just don't think breaking news here, but Tony Pollard isn't Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is a very good football player. The Dallas Cowboys are a good football team. But the Niners, the Cowboys, they're two different offenses with two different sets of weapons around the quarterback. Dak Prescott is playing extremely good football right now. Absolutely. 100%. But I still like the Eagles in this one.
Yeah, and I don't know what the margin may be. It may be 1 point, but I do.
It might be, yeah.
At the end of the day, I think you'll hear the song that people who listen to this show, like the Eagles, may have heard once or twice. The only game that we differed on here was the Kansas City Buffalo game. I don't have the greatest of reasons, frankly, for.
I mean, it's a 1 point game. I mean that tells you where we're at here.
Mark, what can we look forward to for the leading up to the game and next week towards week 15 from SB Nation and you?
Well, we'll have all the games covered, obviously, all weekend long. We've got Heisman Trophy Award presentation on Saturday night. We'll have that covered. We're all sort of waiting on Shohei Ohtani. We have reached the track and private airplanes portion of the Shohei proceedings because people found that there is a private jet going from Anaheim to Toronto today. People will wonder if that's going to be a deal or not. So, look, we've got it all covered for you. We'll be covering the games all day Sunday, so check us out, sbnation.com.
Thanks, Mark. Have you on another time. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, my friend. Always a blast.
Jalen, you guys haven't lost a lot of games the last couple of years, but when you have, you bounce back every time. What is it about this team that enables them to be resilient and bounce back after losses?
Yeah, I think the reality is the team changes from year to year. So we'll see how this team responds. We'll see.
Hey, y'all, for the second part of the episode, of course, we had Mark Schofield from SB Nation on to give more of a 30,000-foot look at the NFL overall. We got into some birds, but of course, on the second half here, we got to talk the hometown team. We've got J. Scott Smith from WGAL-8 affiliate of NBC out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jay, how's it going, sir?
Man, it's good to be here. I appreciate you getting. For some reason, you seem to think I know what I'm talking about. So
you do.
No, man, I appreciate that. I spent the last 9 years here in Philly, and it's been. The Eagles were always Team 2 because I was a huge fan of Randall Cunningham growing up. So the Eagles were always going to be Team B with me, as you kind of see in the video. You can kind of see what number 1 is with me, but it's like number 2.
Yeah, a good team this year.
Finally, we'll get to them. We'll get to them. This is a labor of love dealing with these boys all these years. It's the first time since I was a teenager I could wear Lions gear in public and not be embarrassed by it. So it's a good feeling to do this.
Absolutely. Well, let's just get right into it. The Eagles, the hometown team for me, where I grew up, they got their butts kicked pretty good on Sunday night. It was quite the shellacking. I mean, if you had to classify it, of course, it's a combination of things, and maybe not the things I'll list. But what are you thinking that it most is attributable to? You think it was a bad break in terms of the schedule? So many games in a row, bad game plan from the coachings, or were they just on the field with a flat out better team?
I think it's a combination of the timing because of the schedule, because they played, I think it was their third game in 10 days or something like that.
12 days, I think it was 12 days.
3 games in 12 days. And you're playing 3 games in 12 days against a team that has been motivated to beat them from the moment they beat them down in the NFC
Yes.
Championship game. They came in highly motivated. The coaching didn't seem. It's like the first quarter was pretty even, but then something just broke down. And once the 49ers figured it out, they were just carving them up inside. That game, it was stunning how quickly that thing turned. To be honest with you, because it was just. I figured that this was going to go back and forth. When the Niners scored, it's like, okay, the Eagles are going to go back down, and they came back with 3. And I've been saying this I've said it for years. You cannot beat teams like San Francisco kicking field goals, especially if they actually score a touchdown. You have to answer them because the defense is too good. Their defense is way too good. They're way too big, and you cannot fall down 14-3. 14-10, maybe, but you can't be down 14-3. You can't answer touchdowns with field goals, and they just didn't seem to have an answer. Once the Niners got rolling, it just felt like the snowball came down the hill. The best comparison I can make is I just saw that happen about 6 weeks ago to the Lions when they went to Baltimore. Once Baltimore scored a couple times, and then it just got ugly. And it gets ugly fast. It got ugly in a hurry. And that was unfortunately, the Eagles had one of those. It was a combination of the Niners were motivated. It was a bad game plan, and it was just a bad day. I'm not going to subscribe to where a lot of people were saying about the Eagles. I just think that was one bad day. You just couldn't have that bad day against that team that's already mouthy and motivated to beat them anyway.
You know, in some ways, I'll be really interested to see how the rest of this season shapes up for the 49ers, because, you know, you could see it in their exuberance, and they should be excited. But I think they certainly treated this like their Super Bowl, and they, you know, will be interested to see what they got left for the Niners and not the Niners, the Seahawks, and for the Ravens and other teams, because they still got ground to make up to end up getting that 1 seed.
Yeah, because they got to make up. Now the thing is, since they won the game against the Eagles, all they have to do is finish tied with them. If they can finish tied with them, that head-to-head will put them in front. But you just said something there. They still got to deal with Seattle. They got one more with the Rams, and Baltimore is I'm still having PTSD from when my team went to Baltimore. It was on the wrong side of those Ravens. That game is going to look like those old Ravens Steelers games. It sounds like, where they're just going to be battering each other. So they don't have an easy path, but they help themselves out immensely. Now the Eagles can't afford another slip up. Unless the Niners lose another game, they can't afford another slip up, because if they end up in a tie, they go from 1 down to either 2 or potentially 3 if they're not careful.
That's right, because they could be 3 to Detroit. Detroit could beat them out as well. Your team.
And nobody wants to hear anybody say this around here, or Dallas, because Dallas is tied record-wise with Detroit and San Francisco. It's just that they're behind the Eagles. So they could fall all the way to 4, and they don't want to you can't slip up. You have to stay on it. So they have to basically account this as it was one bad day. They just picked a really bad time to have one bad day against that team.
They did. Oh yeah, they did. Shaq Leonard is certainly a welcome sight for sore eyes. I mean, they were without Zach Cunningham. They'll bring in Zach Cunningham back. He'll be active for the game on Sunday night. They'll have Shaq Leonard. Do you think he's able? And I know they plan to get him on the field. He's a smart, heady player. You think he ends up being able to make a difference, make a big play or two this Sunday night?
It's like the rich getting richer, but the Eagles needed it. I don't think people really get that Philly offensively is great, and they're always going to be great. Defensively, they're shaky.
Bad.
They're shaky up there's something that a lot of the things that irritate me about the Detroit Lions defensively, I see creeping up with them. And you can't live the way that the Eagles have been living. So getting a guy like him in there, if nothing else, you see what you got for the rest of the year. That's the thing. You see what you got for the rest of the year. You see what you can get from him. He adds to a defense that you would think is pretty strong, but he's somebody that will help them out right now. I don't begrudge anybody from going out and getting a guy like that you need right when he becomes a free agent. Because if he didn't go there, Dallas is going to get it.
Oh yeah.
Or San Francisco just likes to load up with as many good players as possible. San Francisco could have got it. They had to do it. Whether or not he makes a big impact, I'd like to think he would. It doesn't hurt to have a guy with that level of ability, that pedigree to show up at this time of year to try to help them kind of fortify a wobbly defense. It's like the best way I would equate it is like if you have a desk that has a table with one leg that's a little off kilter. That's what the Eagles' defense has become. Because people are looking at that Philly offensively scary.
Yes,
and you cannot let them get out in front. And they've shown they can come back, but you can't live that way all the time.
Right.
And they got the type of defense where I look at a team like San Francisco, like Dallas, like Detroit, who've all got really good offenses. Where you can go step for step with them. If you can, and it's almost like if you don't want to get into a game where the last team has the ball unless Jalen Hurts is the one with the ball in his hand. And
right.
They got to tighten up that defense. So I think he'll be a big addition for them. We'll just see where it goes. And obviously assuming that there's no injuries involved, but we'll see where it goes.
Absolutely. Cheers to the 49ers for exploiting that weakness with those linebackers there. I mean, the Eagles, Howie Roseman, he gets a lot of credit, and deserved credit. But one of the two main areas of this team that they don't really invest in is the running back and the linebacker position, and the 49ers exploited that. They also exploited Eli Ricks, was abused a little bit in the past. You know, you had a guy or two getting exploited like that, and then next thing you know, Darius Slay's going the other way with a strip fumble or a pick, that completely unexpected. We're not seeing that this year. Do you think that he's kind of due for one of those, or should we just kind of accept that maybe he's lost a step and he's a solid, good corner, but he's not that game-changing guy anymore?
They're not as afraid to throw toward him as they used to be. Even though I think he had the pick against the Patriots earlier this year, but it's like they're not as scared about going in his direction. It almost like it feels like there's going to have to be one of those moments, like the guy in Dallas, Deron Bland, has got all those pick sixes this year. That you have to have one of those moments where make them regret throwing in their direction. I think he's got something left. He's been in the league a minute. I remember when he started in Detroit. He's been in the league a minute, but I still think he's one of the, maybe not the best. I don't think there's ever really a point where I would say he was the best corner in the league, but at least one of the three.
He's in that
four.
group.
Yeah, he's in that group now. It's probably the group is now 10 instead of just 3 or 4 with him in there. I would still think he's got something left there. I don't think he's washed. I think he's got something. He's got something there and he recognizes it too. He's a lot more self-aware than he was in Detroit. And he seems to recognize that there's still some work he needs to do. I think he's probably due to close out this season strong, whether it's in Dallas because of Prescott throwing, he throws a lot, and he, just like Dak, is due to have one of those Dak games at some point.
Yep.
It could come together for the man who calls himself Big Play. I remember the first time
it's time.
It's time for him to make some. I think he might actually be in line to do that when they get to Dallas on Sunday.
That'll be interesting. Now, a reminder, flashback to people back in the 2017 season, the Eagles in Week 13 were lining up to go out to Seattle, played the Russell Wilson Seattle Seahawks, got their butts kicked 10-24, very frustrating game. Carson Wentz riding high, ready to win the league MVP. They lose in very disappointing fashion that next week. They beat the Rams 43-35. If this season is to end in that kind of fashion, we all know how 17 ended. Who's going to have to step up and be Superman or Robin standing next to Jalen? Because we know that I expect Jalen to respond and play well. I think he even played well in the 49ers game, but somebody's going to have to step up. Who's that guy, Jay?
I would think offensively, you get A.J. Brown, who had a run there where it looked like even he started getting mentioned as an MVP candidate because of just how dominant he was. I will look honestly at guys like DeAndre Swift and Kenneth Gainwell. They got to go to those running backs a lot more. They got to put those running backs to use because that's when the Eagles' offense is so friggin' scary.
Yes,
when Swift
you don't know what's coming.
You don't know what's coming because Swift can catch that ball in the backfield. You've got Gainwell. That opens things up for the receivers of the Devontae and and AJ Brown and Watkins and Zakee. All these guys, they've got all these weapons. It's that they're running. The straw that stirs that drink is the running game, because because Jalen is hurt. There's an issue there. So he's not taken off as aggressively as he normally would be, because he's essentially a third running back out there.
That's right.
Along with being the QB. So with him kind of being hampered with that knee injury, the thing you got to have is those running backs, especially Swift in particular, because for some reason they went away from him for a while on Sunday, and it went south very fast when they didn't use him as effectively. And yes, the 49ers defense certainly doesn't have that defense. It certainly doesn't hurt. But you've got to utilize those running backs. Use every possible weapon you can, because again, Dallas's defense is right in that same area as San Francisco. But if you're gonna attack them, you have to attack them with those running backs where you do anything else.
You got to run it. You got to run it. Micah Parsons. You have brand new comments from Nick Bosa. He believes that they created the blueprint to beat Jalen Hurts. He said Jalen Hurts is always looking at the rush, and if you play unselfish football, you can basically shut down Jalen Hurts. I mean, in my opinion, I think that those comments are a little too big. I mean, when you get superstar players, there's no clear-cut blueprint. So I think that's a little bit disrespectful. But do you think there's a little bit to that, to what Bosa was saying?
It doesn't. It certainly helps when Jalen Hurts isn't 100%.
Right.
You're not dealing with a fully healthy, because the 49ers, all we heard for the last 9 months was, well, we didn't have Brock Purdy this, we didn't have Brock Purdy that. Well, Jalen Hurts was out there, but he was out there on one leg. And it's a little bit easier to contain him when there isn't as much of a threat of him tucking it and taking off, and you have to chase him down or chase him all over the place. They probably did show some blueprint of how to slow them down. Stop them? I would never go that far as to say you can stop that team. Short of Hurts not being out there and losing another guy, like losing Swift or losing one of those receivers, you're not going to quote unquote stop the Eagles.
That's right.
Keep them in the ballpark. Pretty much.
Right.
That's really all it is. The best way to stop the Eagles is you got to keep scoring. At some point, you're going to have to kind of see who can have that ball last, and that's the thing with them. But the Niners are also feeling themselves, and they are. They beat a team that they circled that game back in February after they got beat in the title game. So of course they're gonna talk. I think that looking at the way the Eagles are now, if Hurts is 100%, there's probably a slightly different look to that game on Sunday. I won't say that the Eagles don't lose it, but it isn't a wipeout. That was a wipeout that happened.
And I think that the score makes people feel like it wasn't from beginning to end a wipeout.
No.
I think you look at that score, the 42-19, and you think, oh, they weren't even on the same field for most of that game until, basically the Big Dom situation. You have a game that's, very much in contention, but then you finish with a 42-19. So it makes a lot of people who want to go and beat their chest this week feel good, but wasn't a beginning to end beating like that.
The thing about that game is that even though it probably, maybe instead of 42-19, maybe 34-24 or 38-27, that's what that game kind of looked like. Yep. The Niners out-muscled them. And by the middle of that fourth quarter, it looked like which is a rarity for the Eagles, that team looked tougher.
Yep.
They looked tougher. That's really what that was. Is like, even if the score were a little bit tighter, it looked like they got physically out-muscled and overmatched. It was, I go back to the Baltimore-Detroit comparison. The Ravens looked like they were just tougher, which the 49ers are going to get a taste of that too. The Ravens looked like they were just a little bit tougher, and they looked a step slower and a step off. That's what happened to the Eagles. It looked like they didn't have a counterpunch.
Right.
That they're so used to that a team will come out with their first shot. Okay, cool. We'll go right back.
Take the punch. Yep.
But then the Niners hit them with another one. And it was, wait, what do we do here? And then here comes a third one. It's like, wait, they're not gonna simply run out of gas. Yeah. That's really what happened, and that's how a game that was relatively close about, I'd say, halfway through the third quarter, late in the third quarter, turned into a wipeout that looked 42-19. It may not have been 42-19, but that game had 35-24. Written, it had big 35-24 energy written all over it. And it was tough. Sometimes you don't have it. It's better that they have a night like that now than have a night like that in January.
Oh yeah,
especially
because you get to play again.
Yeah, because there's. I mean, I would hope this team had a little something to say about that, but it's like there's a high probability that they're going to end up facing each other again, and it's better to get that out of your system now. Where if you run into each other the second weekend in January, you're at least a lot more prepared for it.
Absolutely. Well, we got one heck of a slate, before we get to any kind of playoff matchup. So let's just jump into this one with serious playoff implications. You got Tampa Bay Bucks going into Atlanta, 2.5 point underdogs. What are you thinking about the Tampa Bay Atlanta Falcons game?
This is I think the kids would call a game like this a mid-off, if anything else.
It really is.
So Tampa and Atlanta, the thing is, they're the top two teams in the NFC. And then normally at this time of year, you get into December, you got the top two teams in the division playing each other. It's a big deal. Except Atlanta and Tampa are not good. They're not good.
No.
I wouldn't be shocked if Tampa went in there and beat them, truth be told, because these are two teams, that whole division outside of the Panthers, who are just horrible. But the three teams in that division that are actually still up for it, Atlanta, Tampa, New Orleans, all three of those teams are interchangeable. And the only shame is that one of them is not just going to make the postseason. They're going to host the postseason game.
That's right.
Dallas or whoever the number 4 team is going to end up having to the 5 is going to have to go to Atlanta or go to Tampa or go to New Orleans the first weekend in January, despite being light years better than whoever wins that division. And I'll give the edge. I'd give the edge to Tampa only because I think Atlanta's lost game. Atlanta lost the game to Josh Dobbs, who was fresh off the street at home.
Yeah.
And
they outsmart themselves.
Yeah, they outthink themselves too often. They're not a very good team. They're a team that just kind of is opportunistic.
Yes.
And if they'll have games where they look like they can stay in and just kind of be pretty good, but then they'll have days where they just get wiped out, where they'll lose a game like the Lions beat them 20-6. It wasn't as close as that score indicates. That was a beating. That felt like a 40-6 game. Atlanta, because of Ritter, you can't really trust Desmond Ritter. You can't trust any of their quarterbacks. I will give the edge to Tampa only because at least I think Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans have something that you have one big play to him, and that's the great equalizer and all that.
Totally with you. Your team, Detroit, they go into Chicago 3-point favorites this week. What are you thinking? How are you feeling?
So I will say this, having just seen this game a couple of weeks ago, where the Bears get out to score first. The problem the Lions have defensively is that quarterbacks who are mobile give them all sorts of just fits.
Yeah, they do.
And Justin Fields, the last three times he played the Lions, he's gone for 100 yards each time. The thing is, the Lions have won all three of those games because the Bears are the Bears. Yeah. And the Bears are what the Lions were not that long ago. They're that team that will get up by 10, 14. And it will be bad. It will be aggravating. It will be irritating to watch. But at some point the Bears are going to go Bears. And that, like what happened in the first game a couple weeks ago, Bears are 26-14, cruising. You have Justin Fields breaking off this big run because the Lions can't contain on a guy like him. They finally bring him down, and he's celebrating and dancing on the sideline. But they come up short and only kick a field goal. And immediately the Lions offense, which at any point in time could just wake up, woke up and got it together. Boom, touchdown, 2-pointer, safety. Just like that, they win.
Always a beautiful safety, too. Oh, the excitement on that is crazy. Aiden Hutchinson to kick the ball. That was so cool. I tweeted when that happened because I was in stunned shock at how quickly it just collapsed. Even for the Bears, that was shocking how quickly it fell in on them. I tweeted this, and I always think it's funny that why is it that a safety seems to even be more exhilarating than a touchdown, especially if you're the home team and you pick up, especially in that moment, that play completely ends the ball game because they get the ball back on top of it. It's like seeing the hands go up for the safety. The whole place goes bonkers. And there can't be enough said for this game being in Chicago. This is the first time this coming up on 30 years since the Lions have won a division. It's been more than 30 years since they've really had a team that was legitimately this good. And people are kind of discovering that Lions fans are like Eagle fans. We will take over your whole stadium if you give us an opportunity. We've taken over We took over Kansas City, took over New Orleans last week.
took over Tampa, and everybody, just from my own peeps back home, we've all been eyeballing this game in Chicago. Like that's the one. That's the takeover of takeovers. If you were to see, if you happen to have a Sunday ticket and you picking up that Bears Lions game on Sunday, don't be surprised if half of Soldier Field or more looks like me right now, because we've been planning on taking that place over for a while, and it's like now the takeover is happening. So it helps, and the Lions have acknowledged that this year. The fans take over these and these road games feel like home games, and that's the Bears aren't good. Justin Fields is scary, but they don't have enough, and I know I'm going out on a limb saying that. They don't have enough to beat the Lions.
They don't.
A Lion team that's this good, even with a wobbly defense, because their defense is just as wobbly as the Eagles right now. Even with a wobbly defense, it won't be a 20-6 game. It might be a 34-24 game, 34-28 game, because the Lions will irritate me and annoy me, and that game will be a lot closer than it needs to be. But it's like they'll get it done. I think they'll get it done. That 3 points, that's about right. It actually might be a little bit more than that.
Next game on our slate, we've got the Colts, 2-point favorites going into Cincinnati. They're both playoff contending teams. Jake Browning played really, really well the last Monday Night Football. Who are you thinking comes out on top of that one?
This one's interesting because the Colts aren't going to have Jonathan Taylor, so that's going to be tough on them. As hard as it's to believe, Gardner Minshew, the backup for the Eagles last year and was supposed to be the backup this year. Colts 7-5. They don't look bad.
No. But
Jake Browning played way better than I thought he would. It's like I kind of forgot he was really good at the University of Washington too, but you just kind of forget about him because he was behind Burrow. I honestly think the Bengals might actually win this. It's a home game. Bengals at home against the Colts. The Colts won a game in Baltimore. The Colts have come up with some big wins on the road. But I don't know what it is, but something about Browning makes me think that maybe the Bengals can hang around in this thing.
Very
they're
much.
Still there's that whole big pile of teams at the bottom of the AFC where one game, and now because Pittsburgh lost, it's like that door opens up to kind of reel Pittsburgh in and see who can possibly leapfrog them. Whether the Colts can get to 8 wins and move up further, whether the Bengals can get their 7th one and kind of slide through there. I honestly think Cincinnati has a shot here. I do. It's as good as the Colts have been. That too is that game screams 20-17, 24-21. But it's just for some reason I think the Bengals actually they might have something here where at least they can hang around, because a lot of these teams are all in the same basket. They're all pretty good, but they all have one big flaw. And the Colts missing Taylor is going to be a big deal for them.
Browning is, like you said, Browning played really, really, really well for even for a starting quarterback on Monday Night Football, he played well. But for a backup, a guy who's moved over, young journeyman, the Bengals have definitely a puncher's chance in this one. So.
Oh yeah, I think they're the one of all the teams that lost their starters, and a bunch of them have. I keep knocking on wood that Hurts doesn't go out, that Jared Goff doesn't go out.
Yeah,
but it's with all the guys that they've lost, Browning looks like he might be the best of the whole bunch of these different backups that are fighting their ways into games now.
He's looking better than the guy he'll be playing on Sunday. Mr.
Oh yeah.
Minshew. Minshew has a moment or two. He's got a few dimes that he's got in his back pocket, but other than that, it's play to play. He's not special.
I don't know how the Colts are 7-5, if we're just going to be honest, but somehow they've managed to win these games. So at least they've got a shot, even though it's going to hurt not having Jonathan Taylor in there for them, because he's a big part of that whole mix.
Indy's division rival, Jacksonville's going into Cleveland. Cleveland 3-point favorites in this one. What do you think about that game?
See, that's a toss-up, because Jacksonville's not going to have Lawrence. I know for some reason they're trying to insist that he could play. High ankle sprain. 6 days later, he's not playing.
He's not going to be Trevor Lawrence, even if he is.
If they somehow foolishly put him out there, that that's malpractice. I know Doug Peterson would be stupid enough to put that franchise quarterback with a high ankle sprain out there. So if he doesn't play, and Cleveland's got this great defense, even though they didn't look good against the Rams last week, but Cleveland's got one of the best defenses in the league, and they don't know who their starter is either. They're still doing the whole up in the air thing, whether it's going to, they're intentionally not saying who the starter is going to be, whether it's Robinson or Joe Flacco. Cleveland's going to have a defense that probably will do just enough. This reeks of one of those 14-10 type of games where Cleveland will do just enough to hold on and win. And they hang around too. It keeps my secret hope of a Detroit-Cleveland Super Bowl alive.
That'd be something.
It would be the single most insane matchup ever, because you would get the two teams that have never been there finally getting there, and of course, look across the other side and who do you see? So there's always that little, and you know it's something when I actually am daring to say anything nice about a team from Cleveland, but it's like that. The Browns.
Hey, they've been hanging in there though. I mean, hats off to those guys in that room without Deshaun Watson. Even when Deshaun Watson was in, he wasn't, Texans Deshaun Watson.
No, he wasn't the Deshaun Watson that anybody would have given up a hole that that Cleveland did give all that money to for a few years ago.
And take all that risk with what.
Yeah, with that little thing that he had going on. The reason why he suddenly become available from Houston kind of popped up there. But but see, they're living example of defense wins championships and defense travels. If you've got a good enough defense, you can live with having a mediocre offense. Their offense isn't something to write home about, but yet they're in every single, well, except for the Ram game, they're in every single game because of that defense. And they've got to, I think they beat Jacksonville, but it's going to be another one of those old school AFC Central games where it's probably going to be 14-10, 17-10, somewhere along those lines. They do just enough to win, because Jacksonville without Lawrence, that's not, I don't want any, I'm not trying to watch any of that. Neither is anyone in Jacksonville either.
And this is the kind of game that NFL Red Zone was created for the viewers.
Yep. You don't need to watch the whole thing. Just show me the touchdowns. That's all I need to see.
As people advance into the red zone or a big nice kick return to get somebody to the 40, cool, whippy. Let's get back to the rest of the action.
Let's head back out to that game in Chicago, because I think we don't need to worry about this right now. Or that game in Atlanta. Let's not talk about that.
Exactly. Another NFC North opponent of your team, the Lions, is Minnesota. 3-point favorites going into Vegas. What do you think about that one?
And apparently they're going to get Justin Jefferson back. Now, they don't have – obviously Kirk Cousins gone, and I guess Josh Dobbs is going to get one more chance at this thing after that horrendous game against the Bears, where, as I put it, Josh Dobbs finally Josh Dobbs realized that he's Josh Dobbs. And you kind of see now why Josh Dobbs has been on 3 teams in a calendar year, because that was a disaster. That was horrific. You get Justin Jefferson back, he gets one more chance. The Raiders have actually been playing a lot better. They had that bad start to the year. They didn't look good. They looked listless, and then they fire McDaniels, and it's like there's a bit of a spark with them. Even though they lost Kansas City, even though they lost a game in Kansas City, they're still. I think the Raiders will probably hang in there. I think in Vegas, the Vikings will do just enough to win. It'll be another one of those kind of Minnesota Viking-ish type of games where it's like, how did this team win this game? For most of the game, they're going to look like the Raiders are going to look like the better team. It might come down to one of those Justin Jefferson gets loose for one or two of those Justin Jefferson plays, and it's just enough for them to get out. I keep wanting to say Oakland because it's just like the Raiders. I just see that and I see Oakland, but get out of Vegas with a win over the Raiders.
Yeah, a lot of Oakland people still feel for this team.
The Bay still goes out there too. I got friends in Oakland too that it's like they'll still call them the Oakland Raiders. I still will slip up and call when they play the Lions earlier this year. I was like, yeah, they're playing Oakland. No, they're not. They're playing Las Vegas. It's still. I'm the old head. I always joke. My mother will still occasionally call the Colts the Baltimore Colts. So it's
Baltimore Colts.
She calls them the Baltimore Colts, and I'm still going to call them the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, that's definitely old school Baltimore Colts. That's mid 90s.
That's mid 70s right there. That is
mid 70s. They
they left Baltimore 40 years ago. That is still It's nuts. But it's like every time she sees them, it's like, I'm sorry, they're always going to be the Baltimore Colts. It's like, I know they're in Indianapolis. I'm still calling them the Baltimore Colts. They won a Super Bowl. Don't care. It's Baltimore. It's like, you see, people see where I get it from is if anybody ever gangs around my parents.
Yeah, they got 2 Super Bowls. They got the one with Flacco, and they got the Ray Lewis.
And they got the Ray Lewis one. So Baltimore got 2 with the Ravens, and then Indianapolis they got one. They got one with Peyton Manning. They lost the other one to the Saints. But they got but it's always been in my head that it's like whenever they're on there, it's like, doesn't matter what it is. She's like, I know they're in Indianapolis. But when I see them, I see that horseshoe, I still see the Baltimore.
The Charge. Yeah, absolutely. The Chargers are 2.5 point favorites against Denver, and Jay, I'm gonna be honest, I don't see it. No. I feel like this is a big spot for the Broncos. You talk about the Steelers opening that door, and I feel like the Broncos are going to kick it, are going to walk right in. And so, am I missing something here?
The thing with the Chargers is they're kind of the inverse of last year's Vikings. Like last year's Vikings
figure out how to lose.
Won all those games somehow. Like they won 13 games. I think 9 or 10 of them were by one score. 11 of them were by one score, and they were just barely getting through and winning these games. Any game they won they found a way to get it done. Well, until the postseason, they found a way to get it done. The Chargers have been the opposite direction. Some of it has just been poor decisions. Some of it has been bad luck. It's just kind of they're snake bitten. I would not be stunned at all if they had one of those games where they lead 80% of it, or they're standing toe-to-toe with Denver, and then there's a fumble, or Denver gets the ball back and bleeds the clock and beats them with a field goal like they did Buffalo, and just get out of there. Denver, it's like Denver is another one of those teams. They're kind of like Indianapolis. It's like they're not discernibly great. Now they've got a much better quarterback in Russell Wilson, but they're not discernibly great. But they've got a good enough defense, and they just find ways to they're starting to find ways to win after that 70-point game in Miami. They finally figured out how to just win and get it done. So the Chargers, I just have a funny feeling that they're going to get their hearts broken again, and Brandon Staley's going to get one step closer to getting fired. Because this team's way too good to be in the position that they're 5-7 now. They're way too good of a team to be 5-7.
Yeah, I'm not a big, not to give anybody the idea like, I have put a bunch of money on the games. I don't, I bet a little bit, but I've got a short list of teams. It's a very short list of teams that I'm not touching. I don't bet for the Eagles. I just stay away from it because I'm too tied up. I don't want to take an L, and I don't want to, overestimate or underestimate. And I'm not touching the Chargers unless in this situation you've got an absurd line like this. Yeah. Now I'm taking all of this. Right?
it's like it's begging you to make a move on it. I wouldn't trust the Chargers. I haven't trusted the Chargers since they were in San Diego. So it's like it's a lot easier just for me to look at them as like, that's a really good team, but I'm not coming anywhere near them this year. Not a chance.
No. Buffalo's got a do or die. They're 1-point underdogs in Kansas City. As one of the games of the week. If you don't like the Cowboys Eagles, probably game of the week. Yeah. What are you thinking?
Oh, Kansas City played, and they're coming off playing a one of those games where you look at the Chiefs, where they've been kind of inconsistent all year, and they are just coming off that loss, and Buffalo is showing up at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
They picked the wrong time to show up.
Oh, okay.
They picked the wrong time. I mean, the Bills. The thing is, the Bills are another one of those really, really good teams where it's like, how did you end up in this spot where now they have to win every single time? And Kansas City's coming off a bad loss in Green Bay. That's a bad loss. They're far superior to the Packers. That's a bad loss. It's like the Lions had a bad loss on Thanksgiving. That was a bad loss. They're coming off a bad loss. They've got Buffalo who's reeling. It's a 1-point game the line is 1 out of respect for the Bills.
Yes.
This might be one of those games where it'll be tight through maybe the first half, but then this will be the first time that you'll really see the Chiefs kind of put something together in the second half of the game. If that game is not close at halftime, it's going to be because Kansas City ran away from them. This might be kind of one of those statement type of games for the Chiefs where it's like, look,
we're back.
We can't do this, because even though they're not in any danger of missing the postseason, but they want to be like how the Patriots used to be. Get in that top spot where you've got 2 games at home, where Miami is kind of hanging out right now in that number 1 spot. They want to get back up there because they beat Miami already, so they want to keep pace with them, because if you can catch back up to them, you leapfrog them because of the tiebreaker. This is the game where they're going to likely make the most hay and finally say, look, this is who we are. We're the Super Bowl champions. This team the Bills are good, but they picked the wrong. It could end up being like how San Francisco and Philly were. This is the wrong day for you to be here. And because Andy Reid has that team always prepared, and seeing them drop back-to-back games, especially after that bad loss in Green Bay, that's not going to happen.
Everything you just said logically makes all of the sense, and I agree with it. I just feel like the Buffalo, this is one of these franchise-defining games where they lose this one, you may lose Diggs. Diggs may really go, full TL on folks and all of that. So, for the Bills' sake, they need it more than Kansas City. Kansas City could lose this game and still go ahead and just win the whole thing.
Yeah.
Buffalo's done if they lose this one.
Yeah, that's it. No, and it's a scary thing, because the Bills are on paper and in terms of actual ability, they're one of the probably 5 to 7 best.
Yes, absolutely.
But they've screwed up. You screwed around. They effed around and found out.
They are finding out.
They're finding out. that Denver game really seems to be the tipping point for them, because Denver was supposed to be an easy one.
Yep.
The Eagles, they likely were going to lose that game to the Eagles one way or the other.
Yeah. Yep.
But even though they played unbelievable.
And Josh played great.
I couldn't honestly. And watching, that's the first time I said about the Eagles, like, y'all can't keep living this way, because one of these teams is going to get you if you keep living that way. The Bills are really good, but they painted themselves in a corner. And if they lose in KC, that's it. Like,
that's all
like McDermott might need to start looking for another gig type of thing if they don't make the postseason, because you can't have a team who's that good one game under 500 in December. There's no way that the math doesn't add up with that.
No,
because that Buffalo team's too good.
Dayball may be making a comeback to Buffalo.
I think he would be very happy to get out of North Jersey right about now. The way that things collapsed on the Giants.
It might just collide into we both totally screwed up, but let's get back together.
Let's just make this work again. Let's see if he can get me out of it, because he might get. Well, I don't think he'll get fired this year, but he'd be. I'm sure if an olive branch came out like, "Hey, let's just kind of let's part ways here.
Yes,
just kind of start over."
Right. We tried to date the other people. We thought the grass is greener. Let's get back together.
Right,
we can make it work.
He's got his life together. Everything is good now.
It wasn't the right time then. It's the right time now.
It's the right time.
It's our
now.
time.
It's just not, and it's just not working here.
Well, the main event, a lot of folks probably listened to hear, what you thought about the game. Sunday Night Football, Eagles 3.5-point underdogs in Dallas. The NFL, around the NFL, a lot of people are picking the Cowboys. Some slates are unanimously picking the Cowboys. What are you thinking about this one?
It's all about Hurts and his knee, and how much the Eagles have in them to defensively. Because if this is just a toe-for-toe, one-for-one type of thing, if Hurts is 100%, I'm saying Philadelphia. Even though Dak is playing as well as anybody has ever seen him play, I still think these two are teams, because we saw them the first time. These two teams are about dead even anyway. It's in Dallas, so they have to be mindful of that. And I know they've had a bad run in Dallas the last few years too.
Yep.
But I don't know why this feels like the type of game where everything is tilted. All the negative momentum, all the negative energy is being heaped on the Eagles were after that ugly loss
Yep.
against the 49ers. Now they go to Dallas. It's all doom and gloom. This feels like it will be just as much, even though I don't think he has anything left to prove. This feels like one of those games where Jalen Hurts probably thinks to himself, I got to shut a few people up here.
Yes, you do.
You got to shut.
And if you're listening, Jalen, Jay's right. You do got people.
I don't think he needs to prove anything to anybody. When you play as well as he did, that team got to the Super Bowl. He had one of the best statistical games that a quarterback has ever had in the Super Bowl, and it just simply was they couldn't get the ball back because of a very suspect call late in the game that kept them from getting one more shot with it. I don't think he has anything left to prove, but he also seems like the kind of cat who's so driven that a game like this, he knows the proverbial score with this. This is this could be one of those early legacy games for him. You got to a Super Bowl. You're 10-2, which in most years 10-2. Who's complaining about being 10-2?
Right.
I don't. Anybody complain about being 10-2? But this is the NFL and this is Philly. You're always going to have that sword dangling over your head. This feels like this could be a statement game for them. If this game is close, the Eagles win. Period. This will not be one of those. There will be no blowout. But if this game is close going into the third, fourth quarter, the Eagles are going to win this game. It's just plain and simple. I think they can actually beat Dallas because Dallas has shown against really good teams, which is few and far between. Seattle is, I guess, the closest thing they played to a really good team.
Yep.
They wobble. They struggle. The Eagles already beat them once.
Yep.
If that game is if it's close, if that spread of 3.5, if that game's that close, the Eagles are going to win it. Period. That's because they're battle tested enough that they can stand up one more time. Because they can't and obviously you got to avoid mistakes because apparently they've got a guy who just every time they got Deron Bland where every time the ball comes within earshot of him, he houses it on
to the house.
So they can't turn the ball over. If they turn that ball over, it's going to get ugly real quick for them.
Yes.
But play clean football. I don't know why they can't go to Dallas and finally get that monkey off their back.
It would be a big moment. It would just speak to the kind of guy and kind of leader and player that Jalen Hurts is to come off. You're most embarrassing, and especially if you have a big game. Obviously, you don't need to win. You win the game by 1 point, but if Jalen needs to play well, as a statement legacy game.
Absolutely, and he's the type of guy who can take a game over. How he feels with that knee issue is going to be the biggest key for them. But it wouldn't shock me at all if they go to Dallas and if they play clean football. You turn that ball over 2 or 3 times, it's going to look just like it did with San Francisco. But play as clean a game as you possibly can, and let's see what Dallas is made of. Because it's funny that they're quote unquote America's team, but they got to prove it at some point. It's got to be a show and prove thing. Yeah. They have to prove it. They haven't won in 30 plus years. I know a little something about a team that hasn't won in X amount of years. I know what that looks like.
But y'all don't get the same level of scrutiny.
Nope. And Dallas doesn't get it either. The Eagles are 10-2, and you got Derek Carr going on, or is it Derek? Is it David? It was
Carr? David Carr, the worst Carr.
It was it was the worst Carr, suggesting that Marcus Mariota might be better. See, that's foolishness. But you don't hear that coming from Dallas, who still has. No. They have to prove it to everybody else. But the Eagles are in this position where you got to show and prove. So I think I just go show and prove. It wouldn't stun me if they went in there and won, but they got to keep it clean. Turn that ball over, and you might as well turn the game off at like 9:30 on Sunday night because it's going to be a long night for them.
Yeah, just because that slot receiver position, the Eagles have not proven that they know how to defend people in the slot. The Cowboys always motion CeeDee Lamb, who's one of the best receivers playing like a top 5, top 3 receiver in football this year. They motion him into the slot, and they don't know what to do with guys in the slot at this point.
It's the thing where I watch the Eagles and I think of the potential because you get to the postseason that a second weekend game with Detroit, for example. Mm-hmm. When I look at some of those parts of the Eagles defense, with the thing you mentioned with the slot or these receivers cut through the middle, I'm thinking Amon-Ra St. Brown would have a field day.
Goodness.
With this defense. Jamison Williams would have a field day with some of these parts of the defense. Because you can, or Laporta, the tight end.
Yes.
With all the routes cut up and down the middle. Like offensively, the Lions could absolutely stand toe to toe with the Eagles if you're not careful. It'd
be a lot of fun.
It'll be a ton of fun. But right now with Philly Dallas, it's the same thing. It's like there's too many holes up the middle. And that's the thing I look at. If that defense has to clean that up, because you can't live this way and play. Clearly, it didn't work with San Francisco. It nearly cost them with Buffalo. You can't do that with Dallas. You can't do that because now their schedule gets soft at the back end, thankfully.
Yes.
Even though the Cardinals apparently have decided they just want to try to win a few games now. But you got 2 games.
And why?
Who knows? You got 2 games with the Giants and the Cardinals at the end. You just have to get through this to get there. And you can't mess around with these good teams, because you may survive most of them in the regular season. All it takes is you falling asleep one time.
Yes.
Over the middle goes CeeDee Lamb, or over the middle goes Sam Laporta, and next thing you know, you're done. And
yes.
What do? So they have to tighten this up now, and it can start in Dallas, because you're likely going to have to see him again at some point anyway. So might as well just
100%.
Make it happen now. And you'd rather see him in Philly than see him in Dallas. So make it happen the best way they can.
Absolutely, Jay. Where can we tune in and find your work, support you?
Well, again, I'm on WGAL. I was on KYW News Radio for all these years in Philly, but now I'm in Lancaster, WGAL. That's Channel 8, WGAL.com. Of course, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm Real J. Scott Smith. That's JAYSCO, 2 T's, SMITH. I'm still J. Scott Smith on Twitter. No, I'm not calling it X. It's mama named it Twitter. I'm calling it Twitter. It still says Twitter.com. So therefore, it's Twitter. And I'm still J. Scott Smith on Twitter. And those are probably the best places to find me. I'm also on Threads too, under Real J. Scott Smith, same as my Instagram name. So there's that. And you still want to check out my podcast, which is JSC Radio, J. Scott Confidential. It's available Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all your podcast providers. Go drop a follow on that and check out some of the archives. I'm working on getting some stuff going for once we get on the other side of the year to start 24. So there's plenty happening. And I'm already calling the shot now. The day the Lions win the NFC North, I'm going to drop an emergency pod, because after 30 years, I have to.
Listen.
The Lions were the biggest part of that podcast all those years, all those mediocre to bad Stafford years at 15 and 16 and 17 and 18. And it's just all this. They win that division, the mic will get fired up. I have everything already locked and loaded for that emergency pod. So it's going to be there. So on late December, early January, whenever they clinch it, just look at your podcast feeds, because I'll be showing up probably 2 hours later on there. and congratulations in advance, because you guys are going to lock that thing up. Your lips to God's ears. They gotta, don't mess around. Don't mess around in Chicago. And then next week is Denver. And Russell Wilson has haunted my nightmares since he cost my alma mater the Big Ten title in 2011. Every time I see him, I'm like, that Wisconsin. Russell Wilson. Every time I see him, it's just like, you kept me from going to a Rose Bowl. Well, we got there anyway a couple years later, but you kept me from going to a Rose Bowl that year in 11. I should have gotten 2 trips to Pasadena, not 1 because of him. So they've got Denver next week. But the thing is, don't diddle around with the Bears. Treat the Bears the way the Eagles treat the Giants. Go in there, do what you got to do, and get out of there. That's all that needs to be done. Absolutely, Jay. Thank you so much for making time. We'd love to see you again. Thank you all for listening, and go support Jay's podcast, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Anytime, man. You got my number. Whenever you need me, I'll hop on whenever we can do this again. Absolutely. Thank you, man. You mentioned in the beginning being really fired up for this week. What is driving that? What is driving that? Somebody want what's on your plate. You're going to let them take it. And don't put it just like that.